Kyle MacLachlan plays Dickie Pope in AMC's Lucky Hank. I'm Matt Noble of Gold Derby. Want to kick things off by asking you, Kyle, Dickie Pope remembers how many times he's met William Henry. Do you remember how many times you've met Bob Odenkirk?
Well, I do, in fact, yes. Apart from the first day meeting on the set in Vancouver, we met on a wonderful show called How I Met Your Mother. I'm not going to tell you how long ago it was because it was. Let's just say both Bob and I were much younger and had more hair, and he was on that show, and but I've enjoyed his work for years and years and years. He's just an exceptional performer.
Now, you're a guest star in Lucky Hank. You come in for episode 4, Gooseboxer. What is it like when you come into a series as a guest and you've got to just sort of tap into this world pretty quickly?
You know, I felt very comfortable. So much of that is dependent on how the existing actors and the people that are already working, how they welcome you in. And they were very gracious to me, very excited to have me on set. I knew a couple people already coming up there, but I'd never really worked with Bob, so that was something. To be honest, it was a big reason that I wanted to do the show, just because, again, I respected his work for so long, and I just thought this would be a really fun experience to go up for a couple of episodes and just have a good time.
Well, let's talk a bit, Kyle, about that scene where your character and your first scene in the show in that Gooseboxer episode. Do you want us to talk about how did that scene sort of come together, and sort of what was that like, putting that scene together?
Well, it was an interesting scene. Dickie Pope is an interesting character. I would try to think of another character in my career that I've played that's similar, and I was having a hard time really linking that up because he's almost robotic. He doesn't have a lot of compassion or empathy for his fellow man. But he really tries to make it appear that he does. So there's a little bit of coldness to him. And I was helped a lot by Paul Lieberstein's script, based on the book, of course, Richard Russo's novel, because he wrote in he gave me a lot of clues just in the structure of the dialogue. So I knew going in kind of where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do. And then it was just a matter of letting the scene work, and we had a wonderful director, Dan Attias, directed my first episode. He's been around and he's just a pro. We actually met previous to doing the scene just to talk through a couple things. So I had a pretty good idea going in of what I wanted to do, but I've always leave myself open to other ideas, other suggestions, either from Dan or even from Bob. Bob he's such a smart guy, he's a great writer himself. And so I listen with an open ear to all the ideas and contributions, and then, kind of form my own little amalgam of a character.
You talked about all these clues that were sort of left in the script and the writing of this character. What was one of those clues, or what was the most important clue to uncrack?
Well, there were a couple times when he just said that Dickie stares at Hank, and so he's obviously playing with the rhythm of the scene and the sense of discomfort. And taking a moment like that is challenging because television is about moving forward quickly. So when you actually stop the rhythm, you're saying that there's something sort of, the synapses are not completely working within the character, which I think is very, very much open to an interpretation from the audience. And I love stuff like that. I love stuff that sort of red herrings, if you will, to take you into a new place. It's sort of my stock and trade with David Lynch, particularly with Dale Cooper, the character I played. It's a similar kind of rhythm, It's just a little bit eccentric and difficult to sort of really get a handle on.
Yeah, you said he's such an interesting character, but also his relationship with William in that scene is such an interesting one, because you have two characters that are on such a different wavelength. and it's almost like they're talking not to each other, but across each other a little bit. So how do you approach a scene when your character and the character you're opposite are in such different places?
It's challenging because I as an actor, I mean, your first goal is to connect with the character that you're playing opposite of, you know. So, and you just basically talk and listen back and forth. At least that's what I was trained to do, what I always do. So in this case, yeah, you can see that Dickie is making a tremendous effort to be kind and understanding and helpful to Hank, but it really has nothing to do with Hank. It's all about what Dickie wants. So it was a very much of a scene about disconnection, attempting to connect, not really connecting, not really even wanting to connect, but making it look like we were trying to connect, at least from my side. So you got a lot of things going on that you get to juggle at the time. And I couldn't think of a better partner in a scene than Bob, because he understands all that, the rhythm and the timing and what's needed. And he goes right along with you on that journey. So
what you talked about how listening to him was very important in creating this character and establishing that scene and things. How was Bob helpful? What does he bring? How does he sort of serve the other when you're approaching acting together?
Well, you know, he's a writer actor, you know, so he starts with the material, and he's always interested in trying to find the best way through with the dialogue. And sometimes on the day, that means making adjustments. And he had some suggestions. Our director, Dan, we all had suggestions about how we might be able to maybe make the scene work better in the moment. And that's part of the fun of when you work with people that are creative, that don't necessarily have to, you know, do every word, every period, every comma. You know, there was room to explore a little bit. And when you have such creative people, when you're working with such creative people, the instincts are usually correct. So, and if not, then there's always one of the three of us was going to say, I don't think it goes that way. So you're constantly editing and working through what's written to try to get the very best in that moment. That's the fun. You know, you do all the preparation and then you kind of let it live and breathe. And sometimes there's going to be some adjustments in there.
Was there any, I know in Portlandia you learn and you did a lot of improv. Was there any improv on Lucky Hank?
Not too much, in fact. The script was pretty tight. We did change a few things. We added a line or two here or there, took a few things away. There was not on Portlandia. There was a tremendous amount of improv, certainly in the earlier seasons that I was on. And in that case, you depend so much on your director and editor to go through and just kind of surgically lift out the best stuff. And then that's what the audience will see. They wouldn't want to see they wouldn't want to see how the sausage is made, so to speak.
Yeah. What was the most sort of enjoyable or fun thing about filming Lucky Hank?
Oh gosh, you know, again, getting on set with Bob in front of, I was directing, Dan Adios and Nicole Holofcener were my two directors, both just brilliant. And you know, it's really those are the golden moments in front of the camera when you're working and everything is really cooking and you're creating something and you can feel that something great is happening, and you just don't want to, it's almost like you want to look at it out of your peripheral vision. You don't want to turn and look straight at it because it'll all go away. So just hanging in that moment and feeling that. And both the scenes I did, so the major scenes with Bob, one in the lunchroom, of course, and then we had a couple in the office. I felt that way. It just felt really like I said, this is just what, as an actor, this is what we live for.
You said you'd met him before, so on How I Met Your Mother. But was there anything that surprised you about him from this experience and getting to work more closely with him?
No, not really. Kind of what I expected. You know, he's very, very smart. He's got a wicked sense of humor. He's very fast. He's very sharp. And I think it's true of people, writers, comedians, especially, is that there's an editor that lives inside of them, that is constantly checking and rechecking about the comedy factor, the comedic factor. So they'll do a scene, and off to one side there is a little guy with a piece of paper writing down some thoughts and ideas, generating all these ideas while they're doing the scene, so that when they finish the scene, they say, I had a couple of thoughts. And so I'm like, wow, that's impressive to be able to do that. And Bob was no different. He's firing on a lot of different cylinders.
And it's incredible. Like it's such an interesting, great year for Bob, because he's competing in the drama side of things with Better Call Saul at the Emmys, and the comedy with Lucky Hank. And even like the role in Lucky Hank that he plays has a lot of dramatic elements to it. The role on Better Call Saul has a lot of comedic elements to it, but they're so different characters, and it's just a really cool year to see those two very different performances of him alongside each other.
I agree. I agree. May the best Bob win.
Well, also won't be in the same category. He could win both, like in theory. So
we'll see.
Yeah. When you come into a show like this, we talked a bit about, Bob and what you listen to with him. What do you try to bring and offer coming into the show?
I just bring my thoughts and my ideas, suggestions. My approach is a little more, let's put it on its feet and see how it works. And then if we need to pull it apart from there, we'd be able to determine pretty quickly as actors kind of where it's working, where it's maybe not working, or maybe it's not working because we're not thinking the right thing. So I like to get it up quickly and do that. And in some cases, sometimes there's conversations about the actual dialogue, and I'm much more of a feel player. Like if you're a golfer, you have you're a field player, or you're more technical, and so I tend to want to feel it in the moment. And so I bring that, I guess, and a real sense of understanding what the scene is about, really what we're trying to do in the moment. And then I have, of course, my own through line and my own agenda that I need to bring as well. But I like to be able to appreciate this scene is about this, and ultimately that's what we're trying to get. So, that's just how it works for me.
You've played so many different types of characters, from from Twin Peaks to Portlandia to this one, which you say you can't think of another character like Dicky Pope that you've played before.
No.
What is or is there a through line that you bring to all performances, no matter how different they are from one another?
I guess so. My approach hasn't really changed much through the years. It's just a lot of go to the script and live in that world. Pull it apart as much as you need to, put it back together again. I do really enjoy the process of real slow examination of what's happening in the scene and the dialogue, and thinking about where things are coming from, and really dwell in that for a while. And then I kind of step out of that, and then I don't really think about it much until we're actually in the scene. But I like also, it's the unexpected, the moments, like I said, when you connect with another actor and they do something that's a little different, and then you get to do something that's a little bit different because of what they did, and then back and forth, and that uncertainty, that kind of walking on a wire a little bit is something I really enjoy.
Can you remember a scene or a moment in your career where that really just was really evident, that sort of doing something a little different?
Oh, well, we did that a lot in Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
But then you have the master of that, which is David Lynch. So David Lynch is very much about, I guess you could call it the happy accident that might happen on set. If something goes wrong, or, a glass falls off the table, there's something, somebody falls or stumbles or something spills. And ideally you don't just stop and come out of character, but you actually play through that and incorporate that in the moment. And there were a number of moments of that happened when we were filming Twin Peaks, and So I learned to just stay in the moment. And the case in point, there's a sort of a famous moment when I come face to face with a llama in the offices, the sheriff office. And that was just, someone was bringing the llama through. I was walking through. There was nothing written that we had any kind of eye to eye. And in that moment we were filming, and the llama stopped and I stopped, and we looked at each other, and then we just had a moment, and then we kept going, and there was no breaking of character. There was breaking afterwards, but in the moment, and it turned out to be a really wonderful little piece of film.
Yeah. There you go, from llamas on Twin Peaks to geese on Lucky Hank.
You know, it's all about animals.
All about animals. Were there any happy accidents in Lucky Hank?
There was not really. There was a fun moment in the office. One of the set dressers had put a copy of Dune on the bookshelf, and hadn't told me. And so when I go to the bookshelf, I notice that Hank's book is not there, and it's part of the scene. I look up and I see Dune, and I'm just so tempted to just pull it off and just sort of say, but there is this.
I love it.
But I didn't. But it's just fun. I love stuff like that. It just keeps the day, alive.
What do you think the most sort of important line was for Dickie Pope?
He gets pretty serious with Hank towards the end of that first scene, and really says that this is what's going to happen, and he delivers it in such a sort of a non-emotional, matter of fact, almost with no emotion at all, no empathy at all about what he's going to do. And I think that was a helpful moment for the character, just defining that this is what he's capable of. The veneer of civility that's on Dickie Pope is very thin. And it was beautiful writing. Paul did a beautiful job again, writing to that character. He was very clear to me, based upon what I read, and that's part of why I was looking forward to doing it.
Yeah, and that's like he's very surface level, like, trying to impress, trying to be cordial, but yeah, then it just comes out from under him as he tries to get that Jeffrey Q. Epstein center launch. That's fantastic. Just to finish off, Carl, what do you think is the most sort of special or your favorite thing about the show Lucky Hank?
It is. It's a kind of a hybrid. So it's got these sort of wry comic moments, and sometimes they're a little bit more slapstick, combined with some very emotional and real pain. And it felt very true to life to me. And I couldn't think of a better person than Bob to embody that, to carry that. He just is, it's really something he does well. And I felt that really, for me, in terms of the show, was a pretty interesting thing. You don't see that often. You don't see what we've done here that frequently.
Well, Kyle, thank you so much for spending some time chatting with us today.
Thanks,
You'll be on the guest actor in a comedy series ballot for Lucky Hank for people's consideration, I believe. And people watching this interview can go to goldderby.com to follow the Emmys and other awards. And Kyle, thanks so much for your time. It's always great to chat.
Thanks, Matt.